Welcome to the Digital Marketing Victories Podcast, a podcast about the realities of digital marketing. Listen in each month to learn about the tactics and strategies, soft skills, and technical requirements that go into digital marketing success. I'm Catherine Wattier-Ong, owner of WO Strategies LLC, an organic traffic consultancy.
And I'm Jim Keeney, owner of Federal Web Consulting and founder of DAP, the platform for the engagement economy. Welcome. Let's get into it and celebrate our victories.
I think you're really going to love this episode. I met John on a panel at the Voice Summit along with Dwayne Forrester a few years back and was impressed by his SEO knowledge and the soft skills that he's picked up and he uses with his team. I was interested in learning more about how a director of a large agency manages his team and how he keeps his clients informed, updated, and most importantly, positive about SEO progress. And I also love it in this episode how he digs into the psychological part of SEO, the understanding and the speaking to the emotions involved with your clients. So without further ado, here's John Morabito, the SEO director from Stella Rising. All right, so today we're talking with John Morabito, who's the director of SEO at Stella Rising. Thanks for joining us, John.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Do you want to give our folks a little bit of a background about how you got into digital marketing and SEO?
Yeah, sure. So I actually started out in my career as a graphic designer working for a dental consultant who basically had a dental practice management consulting and info product. So it was very much rooted in the direct response marketing world. You had a lot of postcards and a lot of squeeze pages and landing pages and all sorts of fun stuff like that. And so it was, for me as a graphic designer, it was my very early on exposure to this world of direct response marketing, direct response copywriting, and really indeed the principles of persuasion, right? This guy, Dr. Tom Orant, was where I learned about, the principles of influence and all these other things, and the principles of persuasion from Robert Cialdini. So that's where I sort of initially got my passion for marketing. And then after that, I left to come to New York City. My now wife at the time had moved down here after college, and I started working for a camera shop. So at this camera shop, I was basically making flyers and print collateral and just silly stuff, like making pictures for eBay listings. And eventually my boss came over to my desk and was like, at this time I'd been playing around with SEO in the background. So this was maybe 2011 or 2010. And he was like, hey, do you know how to make a website? I was like, yeah, I've done that before because I'd done some affiliate marketing and I'd done some stuff where I was building, websites about fashion and linking out to ClickBank stuff. And so I built the website, started to market it, pretty quickly got some decent revenue. And basically now that camera store has the name that I came up with and the logo that I came up with on the front of the building. And so it completely was taken over by the headphone store. So that's Audio 46 and they're doing great now. And so from there, I went into the agency world and really wanted to focus in on SEO because as I was sort of leading all of the digital marketing efforts and doing PPC and social and influencer campaigns, there's even videos of me reviewing headphones out there if you try to find them. I really wanted to focus in on SEO. And so I went to, at the time, what was Flying Point Digital, now known as Stella Rising. And that's where I really sort of dug in as an SEO specialist and sort of worked my way through the ranks there. And now am the SEO director. So yeah, that's how I got into it. But like many people, it was sort of a circuitous route to the ultimate goal, right?
Right. That's a lot of our stories for sure. So I have been noticing that you've had quite a few wins at your agency over the last couple of years. You got the best SEO campaign in 2019, your Search Engine Land's best large SEO agency in 2018, et cetera, search personality of the year, that kind of stuff nominated. So a lot of wins over the last couple of years. And I'm just kind of wondering, did you have a certain mix of people on board to help you with the wins? Was it a bit of luck with the clients you're working on? Did you implement some processes that you think really led you there?
Yeah. So it was January 2018 when I took over the team as director. And during that time and even today, we're really blessed to have a lot of clients who were really primed for success. And many of the clients that we were working with 2017, 2018, 2019, we're still working with. So we have really great client retention. And I think because SEO is sort of this compounding value, right, that builds over time, those stories became, it's not like we're telling the same story about the same stuff that we did, but we very often are being nominated for the same clients, right? And so those stories of continued compounding success, I think, is what is attractive to the judges, or at least like that's what makes our entries interesting. I'm not saying that like everyone should submit the same clients for their award entries, because that's like the secret sauce. But for us, it's that we're hitting, in the case of the campaign that won, which was actually a campaign from our associate director, Leah Tagliarino, she had been on like her third year of like something like, triple digit, mid triple digit, like year over year growth numbers, right? For the third year running. And so just like continued success is, I think, what really impressed judges for many of those campaigns. Also, like we've done some interesting stuff. I think some of the individual and the team award stuff had to do with like a tool that we created a couple years ago that we often wrote about in those, and some of the stuff we've been doing around helping clients to better understand JavaScript. So I think, it's also a combination of like sort of staying on the bleeding edge and putting forth new ideas that I think judges are looking for. Another thing is, I think that you mentioned process, right? So the team has very much been a part of that success. So we've always had really amazing folks on the team at Stella Rising. Those folks haven't, it's the agency world, so those folks haven't always been the same people over the last few years, but we've been really blessed to keep a really great team of creative thinkers who are really, really passionate about the client work. And so I think that helps. But the other thing too is like having a standard of process, right? So while the team's changed a bit over the years, we've largely followed this sort of similar process. Granted, there's been changes, like when EAT started becoming a thing, we introduced an EAT audit, against the quality raters guidelines and that type of stuff. But largely like having a process to follow that has been proven, that has given previous clients a degree of success, is something that I feel like has been a key to helping with those awards. But not just the awards, but really client retention and keeping clients happy. So it all sort of ties together.
So for our listeners who might not all be SEOs, John's talking about expertise, authority, and trustworthiness, EAT, which is Google's guideline for content. Really matters if you're more of a site that meets that requirement. So if you're a site that impacts the health, safety, or wellness of your site, of your target audience, then it's more of a priority. But yeah, so that's kind of interesting to me. I'm still curious, two things. One, it sounds like maybe you've got a really great client communication process in place, is my guess. So you could constantly telling your clients, I'm assuming, about new updates or what you're doing, so they know you're providing constant value. That's my guess, but I'm waiting for you to confirm. And the second part is I'm kind of curious about how you're managing staff turnover. So how can you keep the continuity of what you've previously done for new people that you're onboarding? Because it sounds like, not shocking because I worked at Ketchum, that your team shifted. Mm-hmm. Some people left, some people came on board, but you were able to deliver the same message to your client, it sounds like. So can you tell me a little bit more about both of those? Like if you have what you think is maybe some sort of a magic mix about client communication, and if you have an onboarding plan for your staff that keeps continuity.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to mention one more thing, because you sort of made me think of it when you mentioned the word communication to clients, which I will touch on, which is the other part of what's going on with those awards. Is I sort of have a secret weapon, which is that I write, and I have some help from our marketing communications team at the Stella Rising agency. So we have other people who are helping us to craft those. And so I want to give a shout out to the team who helps us to generate those awards, because there's a lot of work that they put into helping us really shape our story. And we have a lot of great storytellers at Stella. So that's something I think is important. But going back to how we communicate with clients, I think sort of the answer to both of those is, and this is not like, I have a very specific vision for what we want both of those things to be, and helping to basically make sure that we're following that is what helps with the continuity. With that said, it's not like it was entirely my vision, right? So I only took over in 2018. I'm sort of following in the footsteps laid out before in many regards, and then adding on my new things. So for us, it really is about like having that standard process. We have sort of a curriculum of deliverables that we offer clients, and we improve these over time, and we do things that are sort of less proactive and more reactive, like a client's doing something new and we want to be able to support that. But by and large, we're following the standard of process, which again has been proven to be pretty successful for clients. So I think having that standard of process, having a sort of process for documenting it, which we have. We have like an intranet, and we have a lot of stuff going on in Asana to make sure that we're communicating different deliverables back and forth. Basically it's like an organic growing thing, right? It's always like, who did the last one, and what is the, what's the unique, interesting finding that you added to this standard or process so that we can sort of bring that into the next clients. And then it's a lot of, time training, right? Like you have to spend time making sure that the work is having that continuity, right? We've been really lucky to be able to keep a lot of the same members of the team, but we've had some people obviously over the last 3 years come in and out. So yeah, I think that's what I would have to say on the training and sort of the continuity bit. Now, yeah.
And so just so that we're all kind of on the same page level, do you mind describing your process? So client comes to you, client's kind of neophyte in SEO practices. What is that process to get them to the point where they're fully functional? And then what are the next things that you're doing in your successful campaigns?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, like many agencies, we do things like keyword research, on-page optimizations, technical auditing. I think a sort of principle that we have, or sort of like perhaps a unique approach, is while some agencies might sort of start out with like a big tech audit and say we need to figure out where all the holes are, and then we're going to start plugging them up. We really start with, unless there's any major obvious discoverability issues and like Google's just not able to crawl this website, then we start making content improvements. We look at what are the right keywords that we need to be targeting, what are the pages that those map to, get those keywords onto the page, because that's where we're going to start to see improvements soonest. When we start to see those improvements, that's when we're able to get client buy-in to do things that are much more painful on their end. So when you've updated, some category level title tags, and all of a sudden we went from being page 2 to page 1 for some valuable keywords for that client, that's sort of a different, place for you to start framing a conversation around something more significant that they need to do, right? You've at that point almost proved out that your work can be powerful, right? And now when you're telling them, hey, you're going to need to grab one of your devs for 10 hours to fix this thing, it's a little bit less crazy sounding, right?
So that's interesting, because it follows on with the last conversation we had. What you're saying is essentially find that one first easy, straightforward success.
Yes.
Get that one. That gets you kind of the initial buy-in. It also demonstrates the aha, right? So the customer then goes, oh, okay, now I see how the pieces connect together, and I've got an understanding of what the impact will be on me.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think that moment, I think, even starts to happen when we do our call to review our keyword research and sometimes our keyword mapping, where it's like, hey, we talked about how you want to rank for these keywords. And, I think we can all agree the best approach to rank for X keyword would be a page about X, right? But looking at your website, we do not have this page.
Yeah.
And so it's like, they go, oh, so you mean to tell me if I create a page about that keyword, we might rank for it? And like in many cases, we're dealing with, enterprise brands, sometimes household names. And it's right. Like, oh, indeed. Like if you just simply create that page, like you have a 70 for domain authority, like, yeah, like it's actually quite likely that we're going to start to see some ranking there. Very often it's coming in and finding that alignment of product offering, different attributes of the product, what customers are actually searching, and then re-envisioning an e-commerce client's taxonomy based on that. And that's kind of like a lot of the magic that happens in the initial phase of the engagement for us with many of our clients. And that is often, like you say, that aha moment where, a marketing manager might have a harder time wrapping their head around something like why the fact that their site is built on basically like a single page application, and it's like, JavaScript and it takes Google a hard, that's harder stuff for them to wrap their head around than like, in some cases, right? Because it's not their realm of expertise. It's not that they're not smart people. But basically hey, a page about this thing that you want to rank for is like a good starting learning, right? So we're always sort of educating clients, and we're taking them along this journey of basically becoming SEOs themselves, right? And really starting to understand how to do SEO. And so like when you start to learn SEO, right, you start from the basics, right? You find keywords that matter, you figure out how to put them on the page. And indeed, that's sort of what we're doing with our clients.
And so when you're doing that initial interaction with your clients, do you find that they just know their keywords, or is it competition research, or what's the best way to get them to focus on an actual actionable list of keywords?
I would say that, there's what's important in that process would be collaboration. So we very often will show them, what are the keywords that you're presently ranking for, your competitors are ranking for, and we like to make sure that we're targeting things that are what I sort of call like adequately represented across different ranking categories. So we have enough keywords that are maybe brand or defend and protect in really high ranking positions. We have enough keywords that are in low hanging fruit positions that we expect to see improve in rank within near term. We have enough sort of long-term opportunity keywords. And then maybe we have some aspirational keywords that are things that are very high volume. And those aspirational keywords are very often the ones that the C-suite are like, yeah, we want to rank for that, right? And it's more of like an education lesson of, well, we have to start with these keywords, right? And then we're gonna build relevance around these topics and sort of, leading people into it that way.
So related to the keyword research and the collaboration with the client, do you have a set of keywords that you show them so you don't get the eyes glazed over? It sounds like you're definitely bucketing them, which I'm sure helps.
Yep.
But do you also limit the number you show them initially and then show them some again later or something?
Yeah, something along those lines. Yeah. We basically, we present our clients a limited set of keywords, but we also like to show them all the keyword research that we did. So very often we're looking at 50,000 keywords, right? And we deliver that in our keyword research process, which I think, is, I don't really know too much about other agencies' processes, to be honest, right? But that it sounds like a lot of keywords to me. But right?
Yep.
But yeah, of course, we narrow it down. So I always I say I like to sound like a middle school algebra teacher, and I'm always telling people, show your work, right? Like I want to see how we got to that answer. And so I think it's important to not only show the focal point of the keyword research, but also the research itself.
Let's kind of walk on from there, right? So that's kind of the initial thing. So you've got that initial win. That gets them the buy-in. Now you're starting to get into more strategy and bigger questions. Can you kind of move forward from those initial steps to working with a client that you've had for a long period of time and how you're future seeking? Because you get to a certain plateau where it's like, all right, now what? We've got our funnels working great. We've got our we've got our authority established. What does that ideation now look like as you're moving forward?
Yeah, sure. That is, we've had a lot of discussions on the team about sort of, like as I said, we've got the standard of process, but then you sort of do those deliverables over the course of a year engagement, let's say, and then it's kind of like, well, now what, right? So many of the things that we do can be sort of segmented into smaller market categories, keyword categories. So we might do like a on-page competitive analysis, looking at what's going on across the competitive set, the core competitive set that is presented to us either by the client or something that we determine based on who's ranking for certain terms. But let's say that the client launches a new product line. 6 months, 9 months down the road, we might create a specific deliverable for them around that product line, looking at how do others talk about that particular thing. So for us, there's really always something to do. So long as our brands are constantly evolving, which literally all of them are, there's always a new product, there's always a new initiative, there's always a new service. And so much of our sort of later SEO becomes truly like a partnership where we're supporting any of the initiatives that they have whilst also putting forth proactive deliverables that help to push them to greater levels of authority, better content, growing the content on the site, and these types of things.
Let's ask a quirky question. What is like the worst things that you've encountered when you first start onboarding a client? What are some of the things that you run into that you're just like, oh, really? They're doing that? What's going on here?
Well, all right. So for onboarding, I would say we've definitely come into a number of sites that come on and they've just been no indexed. So they're like, what's going on with our website? We just migrated. We don't know what's going on. We had all this traffic and now it went away. We feel like we need to hire an SEO agency. And, in those cases, I always have to tell them like, it looked like it's just like this thing, but like there's a lot more that we can do to help you. And so we've been able to like convince some of those clients by sort of giving that freebie away almost and being transparent, because I don't want to take on someone just to like, okay, here you go, you're all set. But basically, yeah, so that would be one of the more sort of like, head face palm type moments, right? The other would be maybe not an onboarding thing, but, we've had clients kind of like nonchalantly be like, oh yeah, we're doing this like reputation management thing. And this is a client who's no longer with the agency, but, it turned out that the client had no idea what they were sort of getting themselves into. They were just sold this service by a company who said that they were going to help push down some results that they didn't want to see in search. It ended up that what they were doing was creating, a massive blog network. And so I was actually able to like pull down all of the referring domains from something like, 40, 50 domains. And I put them all into Power BI, and I created basically like I don't even know what the diagram would be called, but basically visualizing the connection between these domains. And wouldn't you know, it literally creates a web. It's the most crazy thing to see, right? But it like, oh my God, it looks like a wheel, right? And so, that was one of those moments where I was like, oh God, I can't believe that's what I found.
Yeah.
Hold on for a second. I'm going to let the dog out.
Okay. I woke the dog.
Yeah. So where I'd like to kind of dive in a little more after this is what differentiates the clients that you really love working with. So, as consultants, we always have this experience, right? Where, we encounter 10 clients and 3 of them we're like really excited to be working with. And the rest were like, it's going to be that again. And so tell me about tell me about some of the experiences of your best clients and what distinguishes them. What do they do that's different from other clients, and why is that so important?
Yeah, well, first, I love all of my clients.
Of course.
But, I would say that the ones, and even the ones who might maybe give you that initial reaction of like, oof, I don't know if this is going to go great. I find that I always learn from them. And so ultimately, I really enjoy working with all of them. But the clients who I would say see the most success out of our partnership are those that really hold up their end of the bargain in terms of pushing things through organizationally, right? So the work that we do only is impactful if we get it implemented. So client teams that are really successful at taking our recommendations, putting them into the dev queue, pushing those along, making sure that they get implemented, being sort of bold and taking risks and doing, things that are creative with us are definitely the ones that have seen the most success out of SEO. Yeah.
So do you think there's champions internally that you know of initially, or are you seeking them out and sort of giving them extra love and support so they become internal champions, or a little bit of both?
You mean within the client organizations?
Yes, within the client organizations.
Yeah. I mean, definitely, right? So very often we're working with one primary point of contact. And as I said earlier, we really believe in a partnership approach. So we're trying to become almost like an extension of the team. In doing so, we really try to become that person's place to go to for not only SEO, but really anything digital marketing, right? We try to really support our clients in any way that we can. It's usually that person who then champions SEO within the organization. So through that time working with them directly, through that time sort of teaching them about SEO and the way that things work. But then even in the cases where we have like multiple client teams, I would say that you have to also, one of the things about enterprise SEO that's different than when you're working with, smaller brands where you might only have one point of contact who has less red tape to get through, is you sort of have to learn who your person is for each thing, right? So you have to build relationships within the organization with different people I don't want to sound like opportunist, but like to basically get different things out of people, right? So if you're talking to the art department about your tech fixes, that's not going to get you very far. So you have to know who are the right people organizationally to bring certain things to, because sometimes you might not have one sort of point of contact who's holistically owning everything. You're the holistic point of contact for SEO, and everyone needs to sort of, you need to then disseminate that information organizationally. So that's something that we've gotten very good at over the years.
Do you ever proactively either draft materials that get shared internally or proactively ask for some time on somebody else's calendar in a different department? Our last interview with Dan Shore, he had actually a few insightful moments when I asked him this type of question because he works with some enterprise level organizations. So I'm just kind of curious about the getting into the weeds of if you can remember how you grew those relationships particularly.
I would say that, I'm thinking of one particular case with a brand that we started basically doing a training series with. So this is where I was going out to Pennsylvania for a major manufacturer of residential and commercial lighting switches. And we were doing, SEO 101 trainings. So getting like 30 people throughout the organization in a room and teaching them about SEO. Then we did a copywriting training. So really specifically training around copywriting. So I think that yes, training and basically preparing lessons or preparing materials to sort of teach the client teams about SEO can be really successful in terms of like getting that buy-in across teams organizationally. Because very often it takes sort of like, if you're talking about an enterprise, it takes mobilization of a large number of people to get things done, right? Like in this particular brand, one thing has to go through 20 people. And so you really kind of need all 20 of those people to understand what the objective of SEO is, what your initiatives are, and where you're trying to go with it.
Comes back to corporate communication, to that link with the customer, and also communication internally, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so as you're working on selling through SEO in larger enterprise organizations, and I ask this because I work with quite a few too, on one of our previous interviews, another SEO had a very unique way of making himself available to the larger organization, which I thought was really different and new that I hadn't heard about. And so I'm kind of curious, what is your process to help the organizational change that needs to happen in these enterprise level organizations? Do you provide trainings or materials or time? Like what can you tell us a little bit more about what you've seen become successful with your organizations that you're working with?
So in addition to the trainings that I just mentioned, one of the things that we also do is very early on in the engagement, we basically ask anyone on the client team who handles PR to a meeting. During that meeting, we basically explain to them the connection and synergy between SEO and PR. Like very many times our client teams are working with anywhere from some of the biggest PR agencies to just like, a person in the brand who's in charge of the PR communications. And so during that meeting, we're telling them, look, like here are sort of the shared objectives of what we're doing here, right? Here are some of the common pitfalls that we see with what PR agencies typically end up going out and generating and what we're looking to have generated, right? And for many times with our clients, that comes back to like beauty brands that are being linked to on, Dermstore, Sephora, and like all of these affiliate sites where the publishers are really sort of adverse to directly linking to the client, right? And so we have to get really creative about ways that we're going to make publishers want to link directly to the brand website, that it's not purely about just the product. And so that means creative content, creative pitches. That means getting very involved with the PR team. It also at times means sort of having the client reframe the discussion with their PR team, which is that we love placements, but we really love placements that point directly back to our website, right? Because very often the client comes to a PR and says, we want visibility. We want mentions. We want placements on high monthly average view websites that are going to drive visibility for our brand. They're not necessarily thinking we want links, but ultimately some of the brands that are sort of like maybe serendipitously or deliberately very successful with digital PR and backlinks is really through these types of PR initiatives, right? And so it's sort of connecting the dots and saying, look, what you guys are doing is ultimately what we're trying to do. Right? You hear SEOs talk about all the time, like creating, interesting content pitches and going out to meet. It's like, well, we also have a whole other discipline. Meanwhile, there's these other teams that are completely specialized to do that, right? They've got the Rolodex. They know that editor. They've talked to them. So why are we, trying to, and I'm not saying that we don't do any outreach, but like, why start in the trenches when you can go to the people who are already on the front lines and start to work with them to try to foster those relationships with publishers, right? In many cases, they already have those relationships. So it's about connecting the dots there for us with like the PR and SEO as sort of being a shared goal type thing.
Trying to get in the head of a PR person, because I used to work at Ketchum, so I'm very curious about your response to this question. So what is it that you think is driving an aha moment for the PR practitioner to want to help you? Are you getting someone internally to put some pressure on what their deliverables should be? Yeah, what's that carrot that gets them to start helping you beyond just educating them? Educating them is great. I did plenty of that at Ketchum, but that did not get them to change their behavior. So I'm curious about the behavior change. Do you have a little tip there?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't want to make this sound easy because it's really not. Because very often the publishers, it's not even the PR agencies or person's fault. It's that the publishers are super adverse to linking to things that don't have monetary benefit for them. So take that for what you will, right? But that kind of means that like the linkerati is very much pay to play, you know? But you know, I think that it really is about getting the client to say, this is what I want. Right. And so like we have a direct line to the client. We don't offer PR. Right. So the PR is a separate agency. And so long as the client is sort of, we say to the client, links are important to you. And then the client turns to their PR agency and says, links are important to me. And that's when links become important to them. Some of the, and again, it doesn't necessarily mean a seismic shift, but it's important for the client to communicate that to their vendor, the PR vendor that is, that this was part of my objective with you. This is what I would like. This is what would make me happy. And if you're dealing with assuming that the PR agency likes to keep their clients, right, they're going to try to action on what the client is saying makes them happy, right, and is part of what their goal is. And I'm not advising people to go fire their PR agency if they're not getting them lots of backlinks. But, if you say, I would like to find ways to get links directly back to my website instead of all these affiliate websites that sell my products, they should be open to that. They should try to work with you on how to do that, I think. One of the ways that we've seen clients or seen PR teams work with us to help better communicate and save us time is, even in their weekly digest, basically saying like, does this link directly to the website? And so once we had that conversation, sure, not everything went directly to the website. But now all of a sudden we start to see, well, maybe not all of a sudden, but now we're starting to see, there's clearly more links directly to the website. They're trying, right? They're doing their best, and that's all we ask for. So yeah, that's kind of how that goes.
Now, does that drive the creative conversations with the customer? Because part of what we're doing in the marketing world is we're coming up with the creative campaigns, and we're starting to think about, unique ways to really excite people about the organization or the product or what have you. And those sorts of creative endeavors lead to more rich backlinking.
Exactly. Yeah. So an example of that right now is, so at Stella Rising, we have, the same sort of marketing communications team. Well, actually not the same team. So parts of the same team. Basically, we have a research and insights team. So our research and insights team uses some of the industry's biggest tools to do research, but also we have our own proprietary research community called Glimmer. So we actually have a pool of like 25,000 women who we can tap for poll questions. And so sometimes what we'll do is we'll actually create data-driven visuals for our clients based on these polls that will launch to our own community of, again, 25,000 everyday women, asking them questions. In one example, we created a map of the United States asking women what hairstyle was going to be sort of like their look for 2020, or actually maybe 2019. And then basically like depicted that regionally and found that there were some definite like differences regionally from like the West Coast and the East Coast and stuff like that. So I would say that trying to use data-driven visuals where there's something surprising or unique. I can't remember who wrote it, but this is sort of based on an Ahrefs article called The Trust Formula. And, people have been doing this for ages, but I think this guy was the first one to sort of put like a good catchy name to it. But, sort of like data-driven visuals, not necessarily infographics, is something that we're using as a method to create rich stories that our client PR teams can then take out and try to promote wherein there's no other logical alternative but to link back to the client website, to the study, to the graphic, to the brand, right? You're not going to like link to the product on, Nordstrom shop or whatever, because you're talking about this map. And so I think it's having a creative approach, having a story that your customers want to hear, arming your PR team with that creative story is part of the recipe for how to make that work.
Does video and audio play a role in that as well?
It's a great question. So I would say that absolutely, but that's not something that we have done a ton with. Interestingly enough, a lot of our brands do produce, maybe not for backlinking or creating links, or using it as sort of like a linkable asset. But a lot of our brands, being that they're beauty brands, do create tutorial videos. And so one of the things that we've had some success with there is basically reappropriating this, right? So taking a tutorial video, creating a blog post out of that, taking the video and uploading it to YouTube because it was like natively uploaded on the website, spreading it out throughout the ecosystem, taking that transcript and again, sort of turning that into a blog post and treating that as a landing page. So we've done some stuff in sort of taking client video assets and then creating an SEO landing page out of that, but not much in the way of using them for linkable assets just yet.
Okay, so I'm kind of curious about the persuasion part because I'm still back on the fact that you're on purpose creating relationships with different folks within your client organization to lead organizational change, to be more effective, etc. We haven't talked about technical yet, and Jim's got a technical background. He builds websites. So I'm really curious. I know you have to deliver a technical audit. It's always really challenging to get your technical audits, the pieces of it implemented. And I know you prioritize, we all do. But is there something else that you think maybe you don't even get to do this across the board because the personality on the other side I've found really impacts how effective you might be. So the developer team and whether or not somebody sort of gets it, I think in my experience, changes whether you get stuff pushed through. But is there anything that you've noticed across all your clients where it's like the magic mix that helps a bit to get those fixes pushed through?
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about our process there. So as you mentioned, right, prioritization is a big thing. So when we come out of our technical audit, for us, it's like the big 40-page Word document type thing. At the back of it, we have sort of a table. And then we basically take that table and we put it into an Excel. And that Excel or Google Doc, right, is essentially used as a project management tool between us and the client. Within that Excel, we have what is the task? So what is the thing that we've assigned? We'll then have like some notes about it. So maybe it is something like, and so I think the reason we have the notes is because context is important. And very often developers are going to look at this, then they're going to come back to it 3 weeks later. They're not SEOs. So the stuff that you're saying kind of bears some repeating and bears some need for context. So let's say I say something like start using pre-rendering or move to server-side rendering, right? And that's something that we recommend coming out of a technical audit. Well, in the notes section, I'm going to explain to them why this is beneficial, right? So we're going to say something as concise as possible, like client-side rendering can impact page load times as well as Google's crawl rate for your website. The purpose here is to make discoverability easier. And so we're giving the developer a little bit of context, and that might not have been the perfect explanation, but we're giving the developer some context as to why we're doing this. Then we're going to have the prioritization. So in this particular case, let's say that this really was, so we have a client website right now where a combination of Search Spring and Magento is causing an issue where as the Search Spring sort of like kicks in, the page is like timing out and it's just like all the entire body of the category page is not coming into Google mobile friendly testing tool. The way that rankings are behaving, I'm pretty sure that real Googlebot's not seeing it. It's not coming into any of our testing tools. So, there's something going on here because of this basically client-side rendering. And so we'll say that this is a high priority item. And then we're going to say that the estimated impact. So this is something that I think comes from having done a lot of these, and you have to. There's clearly some estimating happening here, but judging by the severity of the situation, like in this particular case, I know that fixing that thing is going to have a high impact. And so I actually will do a scale of high, medium, low impact. We're not going to tell you this is going to increase your traffic by 25%. Sometimes clients have asked us for that type of granularity. We'll do our best, but I think it's sort of an exercise in guessing to sort of say the percent that you're going to see out of it. But something like fixing this thing where Google literally cannot see our category, right? It can't see, it knows that this is a category page, but it can't see the products, right? So like, how much is it going to love that page, right? This is something we're clearly fixing. This is going to have a high impact. And the last thing that we'll do is, just having been through a lot of these fixes with different developers, we'll give our best guess as to the difficulty for the dev. Now, this can be a tricky subject because we're not devs, but we know generally that, let's say that we have 50,000 internal links throughout blog posts that are to all different pages on the website because we migrated the website, and then, there's all these blog posts that point internally to links, and it's like in the body of the HTML, but no one ever went in and fixed it. I'm pretty sure that's going to take a long time. Even if you're doing find and replace, right? That's going to stink and it's going to be painful. And so we know that it's a lot of time versus like, hey, we noticed on the canonical, you're not including a trailing slash. It's like, okay, we know that you're going into a page template and like, yeah, maybe there's some extenuating circumstances that make this sort of difficult, but by and large, this is going to be a fairly straightforward fix that you should be able to execute in a minimal amount of time. So with a combination of a rough estimation of how long something is going to take, the expected impact, and what we assign as the priority, we can very easily rank and file these things to the order in which we want the dev or the client team to file them for tickets. From there, it becomes our job. I always sort of explain to people coming onto the team that your job is at least 20% project manager and cheerleader. So every time we get on the phone, it's not just like, hey, did you do that thing? It's like, well, if you don't do it, we're not going to see any impact, right? Like you have to keep positive, right? You have to celebrate the victories. You have to take note of where we have gotten something done, and really, as politely and as positively as you can, try to push things along. And very often, again, this is where it goes back to the clients that are successful. Clients that are most successful are energized by that. They push things through. And you know what? Even the clients that are not super thrilled with big to-do lists and get some of that stuff done, like because we're prioritizing things, even if we knock off the first two things, and we're moving kind of slow, we're making big progress because we're starting with the biggest things. And then, like I said, like we're also looking at the website holistically. We're not just focused on the technical aspect of SEO. So all the while, each month, we're giving them technical content and offsite based deliverables. So we're moving the needle forward all over the place, even if we're not just racking through all of the technical fixes, we're still able to move the site forward. I mean, I think I speak for many SEOs when you'll do a technical audit and there'll be things a year later that you're still looking at that you've recommended to fix. And it's not that those things wouldn't be impactful. It just doesn't mean that you can't be impactful elsewhere. So I think also sometimes it's about not getting hung up. So project managing that list, still pushing that list through, still being a cheerleader, but then not just stopping there. Right? It's always about that what's next, and you got to be putting forth proactive ideas. Okay, well, maybe if this is tough for your developer, could we do this instead? Or all right, so I said I wanted you to build out a category with all of these products, but I noticed you have this page template. Could we respin that page template? So sometimes it's also about getting a little bit creative and trying to understand once you're pushing all these things through, if you're pushing on one of the stones and it's not moving, it's kind of trying to figure out how can I reframe the ask here in a way that maybe I can get it through?
Well, and remaining positive is a really important point because
I think so, yeah.
You have your weekly meetings or what have you. Yep. You want people to actually get to those meetings and want to be at those meetings.
Right.
You're constantly battering them. Forget it.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's a piece of advice I need to take.
Yeah, you want people to look forward to those meetings. I always see it as a good sign when clients tell us, hey, thanks, John, this was really useful when we hang up a call, even when it's again, giving them their to-do list, right? So right. I think there are ways, and I've certainly more early on in my career, right? I can remember times where I was sort of the taskmaster, right? So I say these things from experience, right? I've learned how clients, it's not like any of the clients hating me, I don't think, but you get better results out of them, right? You get sort of better feedback and better vibes out of people when it's more like, hey, did you get this thing done? And they're like, no. You're like, oh, don't worry about it, we'll get it done, but I'll ask you about it next week again, okay? And you just,
I need to steal that voice right there.
Have you ever shared success metrics with your development team? I asked this because I did that once and it seemed like it really moved the needle. I had a client that had a web platform that was very hesitant to do anything, and they had a huge crawl trap. And I got them to fix that one thing, which I knew would be the big mover. And when I showed the increase, they were like a bit floored, frankly. So I'm just kind of wondering if you have a regular process of doing that, or you just do it with the tough cases.
Yeah, there's like a couple devs I have in mind that I've shown some results like that too. I'll tell you, that's maybe something I'm going to take away, is that we should probably be doing that more often. For many of our client teams, we have the developer on the call, right? So like, we probably work with about 50% enterprise-ish or very big brands, and then a lot of fast growth emerging brands. So not small brands, but brands that maybe do have just that one person. So on the other half of it, right, we've very often got a team of like the marketing director, the developer, someone on the content side, maybe even someone involved with social, sometimes someone involved with PR. So we might have 3 to 5 people on a client call, and sometimes those are the developers. So sometimes the developers are getting the monthly reports, and we're hearing, they're sort of part of the story where we're saying like, hey, last month we implemented this thing. Now we're seeing these increases for these keywords related to those pages that we launched. So I think that, to the extent that you can, right, turning this into advice for other folks, is like try to get those developers onto your monthly reporting calls, and then you don't have to maybe make like a special trip of it, right? Mm-hmm. And then they're more, they're more involved in the process. What we call initiative-based reporting. So we did something big, like what you were talking about, Catherine, with like crawl trap, right? So we discovered, not necessarily, well, actually there was a crawl trap in there too, but just a number of indexability issues. We made some changes and went from having like 25,000 pages indexed to 75,000 pages indexed like the next day. And so that was like, instantly show this to the developer, like, hey, Mike, the work that you did here, man, like really, really helped us. Like, thank you so much. Please keep it up, try to cheer him along for the remainder of that list. But I'll tell you, in that particular developer's instance, that's one of those developers we have a really great relationship with. I think he was impressed and happy with the results. That guy was going to keep, trying as hard as he could regardless. But I do think it's important to share that type of stuff for sure.
Speaking from my perspective, development often is an afterthought, and it really needs to be a forethought, because they really are part of the overall equation, especially when you later on in your maturity cycle, you're getting into the flow of the individual within the page. And that becomes a lot of both the individual and the crawler within the page. And that gets into a lot of real subtle things. And we take for granted that technical people know those details, but they don't. Being able to wrap them in as the forethought and say, okay, exactly what you said, this change has an impact for this reason. And letting the developer then discover how they can start to anticipate your needs and get there ahead of you is a really good journey.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm kind of curious, because we chatted a little bit. You've got a couple clients that are not strictly e-commerce.
Yes.
And I'm kind of curious how you've been able to convince them to make large changes on the site that are going to be beneficial when you can't tie it back to revenue.
Yeah. So, for those clients, I think it's always really important to figure out what types of KPIs they're most interested in. Very often for our CPG clients, when we first engage, they might not actually even have what we consider like appropriate goals set up on the website. So they might have a store finder, they might have a newsletter sign up, but they're not really measuring these things as a KPI for success for their website. They're maybe just looking at traffic. And so we sort of call those types of like soft conversions or goal completions, our primary KPI for those types of campaigns. Ultimately, as a performance-driven agency, we're looking to drive revenue for our clients. And so we try to stay away from communicating the benefit of our work based on keyword rankings or even honestly traffic. It's largely about that revenue number. So if we can't talk about revenue, so can we talk about how many people went to a store finder? And is that an indicator of how many people might then go to a store and buy, your kombucha or something like that? So I say that it's making sure that you have those types of soft goals or even just, soft conversions, if you will, that you can talk about. Look, if right now we're getting this many sessions off pages that we've built, And of those sessions, we end up with this many store finder completions. So if we were to build out this new section of pages that I'm recommending, based on the average click-through rate for ranking 1, 2, and 3, and the average monthly search volume, and our conversion rate to a find a store, building out this content could result in 50 more store finder visits per month. And so it's like the same way that we would sort of forecast and tie revenue back to something for an e-commerce website using basically forecasting through the different ranking positions with keyword monthly search volume and a set of keywords that we're going after for, let's say, a set of pages. If it's more of like a technical fix, then that's something where, we could do some similar estimations and say, all right, we believe that doing this fix is going to lead to a 25% increase in traffic. That 25% increase in traffic would equate to this many more newsletter signups, this many store finder completions. For some of our more advanced clients, they are even sharing daily sales data. So for some of our clients who are in, let's say, Sephora, some of the major retail stores, part of our mission is also to drive to that retail store. And so we get back sales data, and sometimes what we're doing is basically tying lift in maybe traffic. Very often it's more things like our display campaigns or other paid channel campaigns, but we can do the same thing with SEO, tying back increase in monthly search volume or increase in demand for the client website, and then people going into those stores and actually making purchase.
That was a great answer. I'm actually also really curious, since we ask this question in just about every podcast, how are you getting closer to your client's customer? So what kind of data are you using? How are you making sure that you're developing content that is going to resonate with them, especially with everything we know about how Google personalizes and uses the searcher's journey and that kind of stuff? I'm wondering if you've pivoted your strategy in any way with a lot of the more recent Google announcements around how smart they are about your target audience.
Yeah, I don't know if it was necessarily, to be honest, a response to any of the more recent stuff, but really I think for us, there's been a desire to better understand who is searching the keywords that we're targeting. And so one of the things that we've started to do is use, I very often, even stepping out of the audience discussion, have been partnering a lot with our PPC team, right? So looking at what we call a Cooptimization audit, understanding the synergies between those two marketing channels where there's sort of give and take between, let's say, branded search. And so through our partnership, our SEO team's partnership with our SEM team, one of the things that I'll do is sometimes look at, let's say we're working with a brand that does something like helps businesses to create their formations, right? So I'll look at a phrase like LLC, which maybe we're bidding against in PPC, and I'll set up a segment in Google Analytics. So you could basically go into segments and add new segments and set up a condition of advertising section keyword equals whatever keyword that you guys are bidding on. So the thinking here is that while many of us are probably saying, well, I never click ads, and so I am a different person, right? That's probably true, but this is as close as we can get, where let's say, 45,000 people per month are searching LLC. Your audience is encapsulated within that. The demographics that are present there, the interest categories, the affinity categories that you can see through Google Analytics are very likely going to overlap with the organic side of that audience, even though we're talking about people who clicked a paid ad. And again, the people who click a paid ad might be slightly different, but it is what we have, right? If anyone's aware of an SEO tool out there that gives you demographic data more accurate than this, let me know. But so we're basically looking at, what are the interest categories? What are the affinity categories for people searching particular keywords? And then we look at how we can build a content strategy around that, right? So in the case of LLC, right, one of the other interest and affinity categories is usually that people are in market for real estate, which makes perfect sense. Someone's building a business, they're doing a formation, they're starting an office. And so you can maybe tap into that by writing a blog post about considerations for selecting an office, or, that was a terrible working title, but something along those lines. So that's one of the ways that we're using that type of keyword demographic data, or even just looking at interest category data, but then looking at from a gender and from a age perspective, who is searching these terms? Does that differ for nonprofit versus LLC? We actually see slightly more women searching for nonprofit in a slightly younger age category than we do searching for LLC. LLC, generally older, generally male searchers for that term. Not even generally, it's more like that one I think was more like 50-50, but then nonprofit had actually more of a tilt. So, you can see sort of interesting things in the data. where, it might be different keyword to keyword. You might have more people of a certain age group searching for something. And that's something I think is interesting that we're starting to play with more and more now.
Awesome. That was a great answer. Okay, so I think we're getting near the end. And so you mentioned quite a few tips and tactics that you've used to get to that win, but is there any other sort of resource that you'd like to share with our listeners that you think would be really helpful?
Yeah, so I don't want to give a lame answer, but I would say that like one of the places that I sort of ran out of episodes, but last year I learned the most probably from a combination of the Brighton SEO podcast. So Dan Shore's podcast, Experts on the Wire. If your listeners are not already listening to Dan's podcast, please do. But then similarly, I would, for me, going to conferences is always like a really big moment of like rejuvenation and passion for learning and everything like that. And so when I've not had the opportunity to go out to Brighton yet, but listening to that podcast has been really instructive. And so I would say that like continue to just like tap into whatever resources are available, particularly the ones that I mentioned there. That would be those would be my tips.
And there's a new website called SEO Slides where people are collecting all the slides.
Oh, that's super cool.
All in one place. So that's your other little tip if you follow along the conference circuit, which I totally do. Don't get a chance to go, but I read the slides for sure.
Yeah.
I think you're interesting. All right. So how can people learn more about you?
So you can find me on Twitter. It is John Morabito SEO. And then also Stella Rising. Reach out to us on the contact page there. We're happy to help out.
Awesome. This has been a great chat. I learned a ton. I picked up quite a few tips that I'm going to add into my own workflow. Thank you for taking the time with us today.
Awesome. My pleasure. Thank you for having me. This has been fun.
Definitely. Each of our podcasts has a theme. The theme of this one apparently was communication. And interestingly enough, the most significant thing at the end was how positive you need to be.
Yeah. I would say, positivity is hugely important.
Yeah. But that and your emphasis on process and clearly the way that you have a process that comes bound with significant deliverables for each of the clients. I think that's a really important point.
Yeah, I think it's key. Clients always want to know where they're going, so it helps.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening.
To find out more about our podcast and what we are up to, go to digitalmarketingvictories.com. Subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And please, if you like what you hear, spread the word. Rate us, comment, and share.
We're always looking for new topics, ideas, and guests. So if you have suggestions, please go to our website or email us at questions@digitalmarketingvictories.com.
And thanks for listening.